The cutting room floor of gaming development gives a look into what may have been possible in an alternate reality where the applicable content was cut due to time or budget constraints, or just steering into a whole other direction. So it is time to unearth all the gems and forgotten concepts from the development of all the Gears of War games, compiled and collected in this juicy video. As always, I'm your host Abz. Sit back and get ready, because this is the cut content from the Gears of War series. The Buckethead. Do you remember the one-manned cog military exosuit called the Silverback, equipped with a heavy rocket launcher and a stripped-down version of the Mulcher machine gun? Well, the precursor to the Silverback was a concept known as the Buckethead. The Buckethead was a two-legged transport machine, transporting a single operator who would navigate and control the walker. Its head was round-shaped and bore the cog insignia on its chest. The Buckethead was an offensive and defensive mechanism, and so it was equipped with a powerful, large-caliber machine gun-style weapon on its right side. I really do like the design of the Buckethead and how it has the cog symbol on its chest. They could always repurpose this concept as a precursor to the Silverback in the Pendulum Wars. With limited technological features, I think that would be awesome. Female Dom. Originally, players were going to be granted the ability to choose the gender of Dom before playing the game. The female Dom's name would have been Dominique, but this whole idea was scrapped because it would have taken way too much time and resources. Just think about it, they would have had to create two separate scripts, hire another voice actor, record more voice lines for every single character, and so on. Therefore, that idea was scrapped. Baird and Cole's switched roles. So originally, Baird and Cole were going to have each other's roles, so Cole was going to be the sarcastic arsehole. Meanwhile, Baird was going to be the larger-than-life former Thrashball star. Of course, it didn't end up going this way, and I'm glad that it didn't. Baird and Cole are such awesome characters, and they are a great duo of contrasting styles. And the Cole Train is one of my favourite characters in the entire franchise, so I'm glad his character wasn't changed. Marcus and Anthony Carmine's original voices. In the first ever Gears of War trailer, Marcus, Dom, and Anthony Carmine were seen sitting and talking. Marcus's previous voice actor was Steve Bloom. Meanwhile, it's unknown who previously voiced Anthony before it was changed.
Are you afraid of the dark? That fairy tale stuff always scares the crap out of me.
Most urban legends are based on fact.
Tell me about it.
The Locust Dragon. In 2004, there was an E3 tech demo presentation where Epic Games presented Unreal Engine 3. So here we saw some early Gears of War prototypes, and one of the Gears assets shown to display the technology was this strange creature that appears to be a Locust Dragon of some sort. Here they were trying to explain character detail of the engine. Now this creature was before the Locust had their name and story, but this dragon has the Locust look all over it, with its helmet, skin, and so on, looking very similar to the hollow creatures seen throughout the Gears universe. We know this was originally a Locust creature, because right after it, they show a Brumak. So this is really cool in terms of what could have been. A Locust Dragon, imagine that. All hell would break loose. You'd be seeing COG Gears being scorched alive. It probably would have suited the Gears universe, but it's crazy to think about. Unreal Warfare. The Gears of War that we know and love wasn't always going to be a campaign-focused, third-person shooter. In fact, Epic Games had originally envisioned the game as a class-based multiplayer shooter called Unreal Warfare, and it was also a vehicle-based shooter at one point. According to Unreal Engine lead programmer James Golding, Unreal Warfare became Gears of War only after several years of continuous development. The game initially focused on the class-based multiplayer experience, but with a sci-fi theme. However, after completing work on Unreal Tournament 2003 and 2004, Epic realized that the industry had entirely changed. Epic found that the single-player campaign had become a major selling point for not just shooters, but all games. It took time for the concept and name of Gears of War to be created, and thankfully they went with this direction. Gears of War Forever. The Locust's previous name. The Locust Horde's name was originally going to be called the Geist, But during this time, Nintendo GameCube introduced a game called Geist, and therefore, Epic Games had to go back to the drawing board and think of a different name. Queen Myrrah was originally called the Geist Allmother, the Locust Reavers were originally called Geist Reapers, and even the Wretches had a previous design. I'm not sure what they were originally called, but they looked a lot more humanoid. They were also seen in the E3 2004 tech demo. I feel like the Coalition may have taken this idea for the Juvies as part of the Swarm, because the Juvies really do appear to be very similar to the previous version of the Wretch. But anyway, I'm glad that they didn't go with the Geist, because the Locust is a way better name. Troika Gunner multiplayer character. In an earlier build of Gears of War 1, the Locust sniper drone in multiplayer was called the Troika Gunner. This was interesting, and especially because the Troika Gunner all these years later has never been a playable character in multiplayer, which really is a shame. The Troika Gunner is a Locust drone, who is seen to man the Troika heavy machine gun, hence where it gets its name, and it has a specialised helmet. If anyone working at the Coalition is watching this video, then please, let's give our boy the Troika Gunner the credit he deserves and grant him a skin in Gears 6. That would be pretty sweet. Early COG gear designs. As Epic Games were originally creating the look of the COG soldiers, they went through over a month of concept iterations. From SWAT style soldiers to futuristic samurai, they always wanted something that was new and distinct. The goal was to make the protagonists as cool as the enemies, but they worked on some designs to get through to the final look, which I believe is also why the gears ended up being so buff and huge, to make them look cool like the Locust. In the end, I will say that they very much succeeded in doing this. The COG armor is so amazing and unique, and the protagonist and gears in Gears of War have been so well designed over the years. In so many different military style games, the soldiers' designs are pretty bland and common looking, but with Gears the designs have always been distinct. Literally one of the best soldier designs ever in science fiction. Early Berserker cutscene. In the Gears of War 1 behind the scenes documentary, I saw a brief cutscene where a Berserker randomly charges through a wall mid-fight. Early chainsaw battle prototype. In more of the earlier prototype footage, we saw a chainsaw duel, probably unfinished, but looked slightly different as the chainsaw battle also involved getting a few punches in, which is pretty cool. Obviously the iconic chainsaw duel is dope, and I would never change that, but it's nice to see the prototype version and what could have potentially been. Cole and Baird's helmets. In one of the beta trailers, we see the scene where the Junker stops, and you have to make it through the rain to the Lithia Emulsion facility. Cole and Baird are there as well, but they're actually wearing helmets. I'd assume that this may have been because their character designs were still unfinished, and therefore the helmets were only placeholders, but honestly I'm not sure. It's a really interesting one. Also, Cole's character wasn't as physically big originally, but once they hired voice actor Lester Spate, who really brought life into the Augustus Cole character, they wanted to give Cole some actual guns for arms, so they tripled the size of his arms, turning Coltrane into an absolute beast. Now with Gears of War 2, I actually couldn't find a lot of concepts and ideas. I looked everywhere, but I did find a few, so here we go. The construction boomer. A concept that never made it into Gears 2 was the idea of having a construction boomer in the Hollow. Similar to how the Butchers were practically non-combatants, as their role was to chop up rockworms and feed them to the Locust horde. The construction boomer would have been armed with a large wrench, and would have probably been seen working in the Hollow until being drawn into the fight. I kinda wish they went along with this, as it would have added a bit more depth to the Locust society in terms of non-military aspects. I would have loved to see the construction boomer, although I think this enemy type would have practically played the same as a Butcher. The Krill breeding grounds. The Krill were originally planned to be part of Gears 2, where their breeding grounds would have been seen in the Hollow, and perhaps different species of the Krill would have been encountered. However, this idea was scrapped, and it was instead written in a collectible that the Krill breeding grounds and the Krill as a whole were made extinct by the detonation of the Lightmass bomb, allowing humans to finally roam free in the city without the fear of being eaten alive. Hoffman's speech. In Gears 2, Chairman Prescott had his iconic speech, and the developers did this to convey to the players what kind of war and what kind of world this is. a backstory of the planet that knew nothing but war, and to convey the significance of Operation Hollow Storm. However, originally, it was planned for Hoffman to do the speech, but that didn't quite work out, hence the character Chairman Prescott was created, and this was also done to convey more of the leadership structure of the coalition of ordered governments. The Palace Guard Sword. Found in the Unreal Editor was the Palace Guard Sword, signature weapons for the highest ranking Theron Guards. The Palace Guards were the defenders of the Royal Palace and Queen Mirror. This was the highest honour a drone could have, and therefore, the Palace Guard were made up of the most decorated and accomplished drones of the Locust army. The Palace Guards are one of the most badass enemies in the whole Gears of War franchise. Adding a signature sword to their arsenal would have been insane, and I think this was a missed opportunity for sure. It's a real shame that the Palace Guard sword never appeared. The Master Boomer. The iconic Locust boomers were seen throughout the Gears games, and we saw many different variants, from the grinders, to the maulers, to the butchers, flame boomers and so on. However, there was another boomer in the works that unfortunately didn't make it into Gears of War 3. This was the Master Boomer, a very different type of boomer who would be equipped with a metal whip with blades at the end, and a backpack that wretches would sit in. The wretches would have been able to jump out, and the Master Boomer would have been able to throw wretches towards the player and use his metal whip to unleash his wrath on the Gears. He also had the same armor as the Savage Boomer variants. The Master Boomer was cancelled before production, but what an amazing concept in my opinion. I really would have loved this. This is probably the closest we've ever gotten to a boomer boss enemy in a Gears game, because I'd assumed the Master Boomer would have been a lot more lethal compared to other boomers, given its name, and it would have been a very dynamic fight, dealing with the wretches at close range, and watching out for the metal whip attacks within a certain range. That would have been pretty fun. The Armored Ticker. The pesky hollow creatures known as the Tickers were seen throughout the Gears games, known for the ticking sounds that they made, and being strapped with emulsion tanks to inflict devastating amounts of damage to gears, vehicles and infrastructure. So there were the standard Tickers, and the wild Tickers, which were just Tickers in their pure form, just small creatures who posed little threat on their own, but were always seen in large numbers. Now the Armored Ticker was an iteration of the Ticker that didn't quite work out. According to Rod Ferguson, in-house they would call it the Roly-Poly Ticker, because this was a heavily armoured Ticker that would roll into a ball as it made its way towards you, and you'd have to use the stopping power of the Lancer to push the ball away. And then as it would get really close, it would explode just like a regular Ticker. So this didn't make it because it was too gimmicky, and to be honest it did seem a bit dumb, because they don't seem menacing at all. It's like you're fighting a beach ball or something. So yeah, I don't think the Armored Ticker was the best concept in the world. But I do believe that the Coalition may have taken this concept and repurposed it into the trackers and shock trackers as part of DB Industries in the newer Gears games. But yeah, my same stance applies. I don't think this concept is best for the Gears universe. The Rocket Launcher. Now the Rocket Launcher was supposed to be in Gears 3, but didn't make it as an individual weapon. Of course there have been rocket launchers seen in the comics, books, and other variants in newer Gears games. But in terms of the rocket launcher as a weapon in itself, unfortunately didn't make it, which is a shame. Although technically it did make it, since rocket launchers were strapped to the Silverbacks. But personally I would have loved to use a rocket launcher as an individual weapon, because it's such a perfect fit for the Gears universe. And it's crazy that it never made it into Gears 3, or the original trilogy as a whole. Cut Locust from Beast Mode. Beast Mode was originally called Siege Mode, and it had a different UI and had other Locust that never made it into the final iteration. This included the standard drone and grenadier, who were replaced by the Savage drone and Savage grenadier. The Shrieker was cut, and the Grinder was also cut from Beast Mode as well, which is quite disappointing actually. And the Reaver didn't make it as well since it was too big and clashed with the smaller indoor maps. And the Armoured Cantus previously had dual wielding Boltox, but that was changed to Gorgon pistols instead. I feel like the Grinder may have just been a bit too OP with its multi machine gun, unless they made it overheat really quickly. The Shrieker would have been an awesome inclusion, and I wish they went further and added a few Theron guards or something. Playable monsters is one of the most fun aspects that many players never knew they needed until Beast Mode dropped with Gears 3. Let's hope playable monsters return in future Gears of War games. Hoffman's scrapped death. Hoffman was originally planned to die in Gears 3, and it was planned for him to accompany Delta Squad to Azura on the submarine, and he would have died on that journey. However, the writer of the original Gears novels, Karen Travis, didn't want him to die because he was a narrative vehicle in the novels and didn't want to lose out on any potential plots. So I'd assume that is probably why he stayed at Anvil Gate, and why he is shown to have a deep history with Anvil Gate from Gears 3 all the way back to the Pendulum Wars, a place he defended to the bitter end, until Marcus Fenix and his father saved humanity. Jace's scrapped death. Well, just like Hoffman, it appeared that Jace Stratton was supposed to die in Gears 3 as well, but in Act 1, when the CNV Sovereign blew up thanks to the Lambent Leviathan. But this was changed, probably because Jace was given more of a prominent role in the story, allowing his character to flesh out a bit more. Also, did you know that Drake was supposed to be the voice actor for Jace, but a scheduling conflict prevented him from coming on board Gears of War 3, and so Michael B. Jordan was instead hired to become the voice actor for Jace Stratton. Jonathan Harper in Ram's Shadow. The original lineup for Zeta Squad in the Ram Shadow DLC was Barrick, Valera, Ty and Jonathan Harper, a gear seen in the comics, but he was replaced with Min, as the writers felt like Min had a history with Ram, and to build upon that and give it some backstory, as well as thinking fans would want to see Min again. The original location in Ram Shadow was going to be Tolan, but ended up being the city of Alima. Marcus Fenix Prologue DLC. One of the Gears 3 DLCs that was scrapped was a prologue involving Marcus Fenix holding off Tolan Road, and him disobeying orders to save his father. But this for some reason didn't make it, and this whole plot of him disobeying orders and being sent to prison was instead explained in the Slab novel. There was another DLC that was supposed to be completed as well for Gears 3, but almost no information about that is available. So yeah, it looks like we missed out on 2 more DLCs for Gears 3. Onyx Guard Alicia Valera. Valera from the Ram Shadow DLC was originally depicted to be a helmeted Onyx Guard-esque character. The design of her armor was supposed to bring to light the speed and flexibility needed by a reconnaissance soldier. But yeah, in the end her design had completely changed. The Savage Buzzsaw. Now then, another scrapped weapon was the Savage Buzzsaw, a Savage Locust weapon that had projectiles that could ricochet off surfaces and slice through gears. An extremely lethal weapon, but unfortunately was cut due to unknown reasons. It appears that the Buzzkill from Gears 4 was the spiritual successor to this concept, as they basically repurposed this weapon into a different design. But I do think that the Buzzsaw really would have suited the merciless aura of the Savage Locust. Wretch grabbing and choking. There was a previous feature in development where wretches would have grabbed onto a gear's head and then choked them in different sets of movements. There were different sound cues for the victims, such as Marcus saying, "Damn it, get this monkey dog off of me." But yeah, this feature didn't end up making it into the game, although it would have added a bit more savagery to the wretch enemies, so definitely a missed opportunity in my book. Also, I feel like Gears 5 may have also repurposed this feature, where juvies execute downed gears by crushing their head into the floor. Mauler Explosive Flail Pickup Weapon. Another feature removed during development showed Mauler Flail weapons being used by standard characters. It was originally a pickup weapon on the map Jacinto, and it is unknown if you could pick it up from dead Maulers, but this feature was removed for unknown reasons. I don't know why, but I'd assumed that the explosive flails were just so huge, so even a gear couldn't carry it and use it. But it's multiplayer, so lore doesn't really matter, so I'm not sure. But imagine that would have been really cool to use the explosive flail in multiplayer. Cleaver throwing. And another feature that was removed was the ability for the player to use the cleavers as throwables by using the left stick and firing with the right stick. This would have sent the cleaver out as a projectile, dealing a lot of damage, although this would have made it unusable once it had landed. Once again, I personally would have really loved this feature. Rat bikes. So the rat bike was seen in the Gears comics, but it was also originally planned to be in Gears 3. Marcus and Dom were originally intended to use the rat bike during an on-rail sequence just before reaching Mercy. The sidecar with the rat bike was able to carry one person, along with the person riding the bike, while the sidecar had a large cannon attached to it and was able to spin 270 degrees around. I gotta say, this was a major missed opportunity, because I can't imagine how fun this sequence would have been as a duo in campaign. That would have been so fun. I really wish the rat bikes made it. Unreleased multiplayer maps. There were literally so many multiplayer DLC maps that for some reason were never released. Some amazing maps from Gears 2 were supposed to return in Gears 3, including River, Security, Day 1 and more. River also had a variant during the night, and I don't know why they didn't release these maps. Was it because of balancing issues, since Gears 3 played totally different to Gears 2? I don't know, but it's a mystery. There were also new maps like Catacombs, Ember, Blowout, and so much more, so it really makes you wonder why all these maps were never released. Cut multiplayer characters and legacy variants. From the previous development period, there were old legacy variants that were replaced, and also multiplayer characters that were cut for unknown reasons. There was Scourge, who completely didn't make it, which is crazy to think about. I really don't know why they didn't add Scourge. The Locust Cyclops didn't make the cut. The legacy RAM for multiplayer was replaced with the younger RAM from the DLC. Legacy Ty from Gears 2 was replaced by younger Ty in the DLC. Legacy Min was replaced as well with the DLC variant. The Legacy Theron Guard was changed, and there was also an unfinished prototype of the Theron Elite, dubbed as the Onyx Theron. Scrapped Onyx Guard game. We begin with Gears Judgement. In a tweet a little while back that has since been deleted, the creator of Gears of War, Cliff Bleszinski, said that he originally wanted Gears Judgement to be an Onyx Guard game. The reason why Delta Squad had such low-tech weapons was because the Onyx Guards had superior weapons and technology, from night vision, X-ray vision, thermal, EMPs, lasers, and so on. He said that the producer Rod Ferguson cut the idea, and that Cliff never wanted to do a game on Baird. Rod Ferguson replied stating that yeah, because he had such power over the creative director. Now this one is tough who to believe, because was Cliff just backtracking, since Gears Judgement was a failure? I don't know, but it's definitely an interesting one. I really would have loved a game on the mysterious Onyx Guard unit. They're really badass, and it would have displayed a completely different side to the COG and the Gears universe, as opposed to a forgettable side story about Baird. Lots of missed potential, but I guess that's the story when it comes to Gears of War. Just so much wasted potential. The cut Locust Hydra. In the Gears Judgement guidebook, there's concept artwork that shows a Locust Hydra flying over the burning city of Halvor Bay. So it appears that originally, the Hydra or another of its species was meant to appear in the game, but got cut during development. There's also another concept artwork of a Theron Elite riding a strange monstrous creature which Marcus Phoenix is fighting. It looks like an early design of the Shibboleth, or a different corpse species, I'm not sure, but it's really cool. If I could guess, I would say that the Theron Elite was a placeholder until General Khan's design was finalized, and that creature was the original design of the Shibboleth. General Khan's original name. In other concept art we see General Khan, and he looks so much shorter and feeble compared to his final design. However, the most interesting detail is that his name was originally going to be General Tal. What do you think of this? Would you have preferred General Tal or General Khan? Sophia and Paddock switched roles. So Sophia Hendrick and Garen Paddock originally had switched roles, where Paddock was supposed to be the Onyx Guard cadet, and Sophia was supposed to be a UIR refugee. At the time, both characters even had completely different names and ages, but later on during the development, the writer decided to swap them because it made more sense. The new enemies that were introduced in Gears 4, the Swarm, originally had concept art where they looked a lot more menacing and monstrous. Some of the designs looked absolutely insane in my opinion, and were much better and a lot more unique compared to the final design of the Swarm. Some of the concepts do look a bit too alien-like, but the Swarm was supposed to be the next generation, so them having a more menacing design would have really fit. It's quite sad that the final designs were nowhere near as good as the concept artwork. The Flare Gun. Now there's concept art of Gears 4 having flare guns, which is really interesting. From what I remember, these didn't make it, although flare guns were seen in the Gears 5 Hivebusters DLC years later. The Bushka grenade launcher. The UIR's Bushka drum-loaded grenade launcher was supposed to be in Gears 4 by the looks of it. This gun was introduced in Gears Judgement and played very differently to the boom shot, as you could use the Bushka to use the ricocheting projectiles to reach enemies from awkward angles. But yeah, the Bushka grenade launcher never made it into Gears 4. The Markser Sniper. The GZ-18 Markser Sniper rifle was supposed to be in Gears 4 as well, but for some reason, just like the Bushka, it never made it. The Markser MK1 marksman rifle was in the game instead. This was similar to the sniper variant, but it possessed a shorter barrel and iron sights instead of a long-range scope. Early infected DB designs. Moving on to Gears 5, we had the DB robots, created by Damon Baird Industries, or DB Industries, which were used by the new COG for dangerous work, construction, and so on. But later it became apparent that the DBs could be corrupted by the swarm, turning them into hostile threats to the Gears. The early concept art of the infected DBs were a lot more grotesque, and they looked a lot more vicious with the flesh coming out of different mechanical components. The final designs were very underwhelming compared to the concept artwork, which is quite frustrating to be honest. The art style and the concepts were a lot more realistic, and the designs were badass in my opinion. So it's really disappointing that the final designs were nowhere near as good as the concept art. Early Warden designs. However, the Wardens are some of the best designed enemies ever in the Gears of War franchise. I really love everything about them. But unlike with the Swarm DBs, the Warden's final design was a lot better compared to the concepts. The signature helmet, the crystals, the gigantic build, the locust armor, and the breaker maces to top it all off. The Warden is freaking awesome. COG Trooper designs. The new COG standard infantry troopers were redesigned slightly, but there were different iterations in the concept art. Some details were added, while some details were removed. I guess they were just playing around with it a bit, because some of the helmets do look quite strange, but overall some interesting artworks. Ukon's pet worm and his staff. Let's kick it off with the antagonist of Gears Tactics, the locust geneticist Ukon. It appears that Ukon was originally designed to have a pet snake, or worm, around his neck. This actually looks like the Riftworm from Gears of War 2, just a baby 6 feet long version, which is kinda cool, I'm not gonna lie. And he was also seen with the staff, which went through some different design changes as well. These were ultimately scrapped, but I kinda wish they stayed. It would have added a little more depth to his design and aura. Ukon was also originally planned to be a Cantus priest. Previous character designs of Ukon also saw him originally be a Cantus priest, with it flickering through many design changes, but the design ended up being too close to the original source material, which I'm guessing was either Scourge or the armoured Cantus. Some of those designs are really interesting, but they do remind me of Scourge, and therefore takes away from the uniqueness of the Ukon character. But regardless, it was changed, as the lore behind Ukon was instead written for him to actually be a sire who retained his mental capacity instead of a Cantus priest. Locust drone with wretches on a lead. Flickering through some other art, and I saw a concept of a locust drone with wretches on a lead. This would have been a dope concept that I really wish materialized, because the locust could have used them to sniff out gears or civilians or whatever else in certain areas, or to then let them loose to do their dirty work for them. Also, in this concept art, the locust drone is actually wearing COG armor, which is strange at a first look. But imagine, what if the idea behind it was that the drone may have scavenged armor from dead COG gears after having its own armor destroyed, or perhaps to confuse gears from afar, a similar tactic that the blue armored UIR elites used against the COG in the Pendulum Wars. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure about the COG armor and the locust concept, but I wish the wretches on a lead was an actual thing. Seeing a cutscene of locust drones patrolling with wretches would have been really cool. I would have really loved that. Gears of War Tactics. Now this isn't a cut concept, but rather the original plan for Gears Tactics. Epic Games' final plans before selling the IP to Microsoft was to create an RTS game called Gears of War Tactics. Barely any footage was seen, and in the end, this was sort of a precursor to the concept behind Gears Tactics many years later, except Gears Tactics would turn out to be a turn-based strategy game, and not a real-time strategy game. Wretches with weapons. Another interesting concept I saw is wretches having weapons, a really fun idea that shows the wretch hollow creatures being equipped with armor, helmets, masks, goggles, fuel tanks, and sort of mini scorcher flamethrowers, as well as some other guns which you can't really tell what they are. This concept kinda reminds me of the grunts from Halo. I really like this idea, but it may not have made much sense if it materialized, considering the wretches were never seen with weapons in any Gears games, so there'd be a lot of explaining to do, especially given the fact that they're pretty small and mindless, not being sophisticated enough to equip one. Unless Ukon genetically modified some into wretch drone hybrids that were a bit larger and more sophisticated than the standard wretches. That would have been really interesting. Fatter boomer variants. In the same image, we have some concept art of these random huge locusts who look like they are boomers, but uglier, fatter, and their bodies just going out of control. I think these concepts were just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. We never saw a deformed boomer variant, so it's not the worst idea to have an enlarged deformed boomer boss whose mass has just spiraled out of control and is just a walking behemoth. I would really love that, but probably better designed than some of these examples. Cog with prosthetic weapons as hands. There are some crazy concepts of Cog gears having prosthetic weapons as hands, from modified metal fists, chainsaws, and more. I ain't gonna lie, this is freaking dope, and would be a badass design for a character in the future. Imagine them having a prosthetic lancer chainsaw in one hand, and snub pistol in the other. That would just be another level of badass, and really different to what we've seen before. Pneumatic battering ram. There's also concept art of a pneumatic battering ram, which I really love. This would have been used to strike objects quickly with high striking velocity, with the chamber contained with air or gas under pressure. Given the designs, this would have been very effective at moving cars or containers out of the way and into locust forces, as well as splattering other locusts with a ram. Once again, I really like this concept. The Brumac Ammo Carrier. A hollow creature designed to accompany the devastating Brumacs was the Brumac Ammo Carrier. Strange creatures which would supply the Brumac with ample ammunition and help it reload its ranged weapons. It's a really cool little concept and design. However, I think it's probably a bit too late for a concept like that, since the Brumacs were seen throughout the Gears of War games, and this ammo carrier creature was never seen, so it wouldn't have made much sense to include the creature, and the writers would have had to shoehorn in a lore explanation to explain why it appeared, and why it didn't appear later on in the war. But yeah, I like this concept as well, but just a little too late. UIR designs. There's some UIR armor designs which look so badass to me. We really do need a Pendulum Wars game or DLC at some point, because the UIR are just so good. Their designs are so unique, and I really like their aura. There's also designs of the Bushka grenade launcher, but with so many different attachments and optics. The shirtless Theron guard. I saw a design of this shirtless locust drone. At a first glance I thought it was a grenadier, given that they are always shirtless, but I believe this may just be a shirtless Theron guard, because their mouths and teeth are more distorted, and it really matches how the Theron's faces actually look. Maybe this was an oversight, and the concept artist intended for it to be a grenadier, since there's a drone there as well, and he's holding a Nasher shotgun, but that facial appearance is definitely a Theron, and I'm sure of it. So there you go, a shirtless Theron. Never seen before, well, until now. Ukon zombie concept thing. I also saw this previous design for Ukon's face and upper body. Looks like a crazy disturbed zombie from Left 4 Dead or COD Zombies, so I'm glad they didn't go with that. But yeah, make of that what you will. The helmetless Locust Hydra. Now the gargantuan Hydra appeared in Gears 2 and Tactics, both with different designs, and seen with bits of armor and a helmet. But in the Gears Tactics concept art, you can see how the Hydra looks without the helmet, and I gotta say, it looks scary and pretty much nightmare fuel. It looks like something almost prehistoric, a really badass rare locust we saw in the games, so I thought I'd include this concept as well. Strange looking hollow creatures. Then we have these pretty weird looking hollow creatures. The first one looks a bit like a cedar, but much smaller, a little bigger in height than your average gear, but it looks like a fast and aggressive enemy type. And there's another one as well, which is like a huge version of the previous enemy, or just a slightly different designed version. I'm not sure what purpose these hollow creatures would have served, but to be honest, there probably were many other hollow creatures that they could explore in the future, especially towards the start of the Locust War, or even earlier, in the Lambent War itself. That would be very interesting to tap into. Previous Locust Disciple and Zealot designs. We have the previous iterations of the Locust Disciples and the Locust Zealots, some of which had different variations, and some designs looked even more menacing than the final designs. Locust Super Soldiers. And then, finally, we have a look at some mock-up concepts of Locust Super Soldiers, where some of them look absolutely insane. One of the Super Soldiers has dual-wielding hammer bursts, which is insanity. One has some sort of a lava staff, and looks almost like a general, or a very high-ranking Super Theron. Some look like they've got prosthetics, and the bottom row is even better, with onyx armor. The middle Super Soldier has some sort of an emulsion gun, which, yeah, I don't know how that would work, but that is next level, and they look so good with the Locust Elite armor, harnesses, and capes. There you have it guys, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the cut content of this amazing franchise. Drop a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more similar content like this, and a special thank you to the YouTube and Patreon members for your additional support of me and the channel. You can become a member for exclusive emojis, a badge next to your name, shoutouts at the end of videos, as well as being included in giveaways. Thank you for watching, I'm your host Abz, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.